Oh no, I was just saying that the last critique I got about like socialized housing was that it would not encourage home ownership, which I think there's got to be a way to implement both.
There absolutely is.
Yeah.
I mean, no, you know, I like socialized housing. I know that they do it on a very small degree in some like of the bigger cities out west.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they have subsidized housing for like the homeless population.
Okay.
You know, so instead of like a shelter system, they set them up with apartments.
Okay.
Right. It costs less money. It's better, obviously, for the people who live there, and it just sets them up with a, you know, it sets them up with a like a home base so that they can get on with their life, basically.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a really great program. It works really well. You know, I mean, it doesn't have to be for everybody. Like, you know, I love my own home. We bought this house like 3 years ago. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I can do whatever I want to it.
Right.
It's mine. You know.
Sure.
And so I don't think that would differ from, you know, private ownership, because people want what's theirs, you know.
Well, actually, now that we bring up savings and what keeps people from having savings, you know, imagine like being able to save all that money and pour into a house later on.
Exactly. You know? Exactly. Yeah. I mean, housing costs have risen so much in the United States. When I was a kid, my stepdad told me that more than a quarter of my take-home pay should not go to housing.
Yep. Yeah.
That's what it should be, a quarter.
Mm-hmm.
So either one weekly paycheck or half of your biweekly paycheck.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yep.
Anything else and you're spending too much to live. I mean, and that's, I really took that to heart, but in some places it's impossible.
Yeah, exactly. So I was reading up on the cost of living in New York City because, you know, obviously it's out of control. And so I read up on the cost and like all throughout the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the costs were like very reasonable in New York City. You could get a 2-bedroom for, I don't know, it was something like dirt cheap, like maybe like, I don't know, $400, like not even that much. It was something like dirt cheap. I can't remember what it was. And then all of a sudden in the 80s, you know, the cost of a 2-bedroom shot up to like $1,700 or something like that. Like overnight, it was like.
And people were just losing their places.
Yeah.
Losing their homes. Because there weren't any, you know, safeguards in place for tenants.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
So they could just leave it, like lose it overnight.
Imagine a city like New York if people didn't have to worry about that one cost of like housing, like what people would be able to do.
It's
like
unbelievable.
From like the best education to like the best transportation to like, you know, everything.
Yeah.
You know, to like getting kids like out of the country on vacations and like seeing the world and, you know, just like anything you wanted to do would be possible.
You could spend your life bettering your life.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think
that's what like a city could be. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's what all our lives should be. We should just be living our lives in order to better not only our lives, but the lives of people around us.
Yeah.
You know,
living our best lives.
Yep.
But yeah, those are like the ideas. Those are like the ideas I would like to see. You know, I would like to see like leaders bring those kind of ideas, you know, into the forefront. I
personally would love to see an overhaul of the justice system, like from top to bottom, soup to nuts, like the whole thing.
Yeah.
Needs to be it needs to be like refigured, the entire thing.
Yeah.
You know, like what we're doing now doesn't work. It simply doesn't work.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I mean,
I've been looking into abolition recently, and you know, I have a friend who does that like for work, and read up on some of the leading people doing abolition, and it's pretty fascinating. The idea of it.
I mean, just imagine. I mean, you would actually be getting people the services that they need.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is something that I wanted to kind of talk to you tonight about, like how it ties in with nursing. Like, I'm specially trained on how to do like the therapeutic holds and the restraints, stuff like that. Right.
So can you talk about so how does that stuff work? Those are safe holds that like don't hurt people, or?
Yeah, they're basically like really, really deep hugs.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're basically swaddling them with your own body.
Okay.
I mean, there are prohibited holds like the chokehold, and it was demonstrated to us very clearly how you could severely hurt somebody, obviously kill them.
Right. You posted on my Facebook one day about what happened with George Floyd and like how many minutes, what was he under for, like 9 minutes or something?
Minutes, 46 seconds.
Yeah. And like the fact that cop must have felt like life draining out of him and that whole thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
that was harrowing to read, because it's just like, you just assume that someone who is just totally like not caring about what they're doing is just doing something without thinking about it. But then when you realize like they have to feel what's happening, that adds another layer.
Like, did he know that he died, or did he think that he just knocked him out so he felt like a big man? Right. Like maybe he didn't know that he killed him, but he definitely knew that he lost consciousness.
Right.
Yeah. So it makes him, proud of himself because he knocked out this dude. I mean, like it really.
Yeah.
There's like so many of these things that we're hearing about. I mean, I know that police brutality against Blacks is obviously nothing new, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like actually one of the most important things I've ever done in terms of like my social awareness is taking a Black literature class.
Okay.
Because it just taught me so much of like post emancipation things. You know what I mean? Like so it was very important for me to take that class, and it really opened my eyes. It really opened my eyes. But to be able to hear of it so often everywhere, it's just, it's unbelievable. Like that guy that got shot in Texas 2 weeks ago for defending somebody, and they just shot him dead.
Yeah.
Or Breonna Taylor sleeping in her house,
right,
dead. Like it just.
Yeah, the instances are so diverse. It's almost as if someone were trying to make a point as to how we should really just like dismantle this whole system.
Right.
I mean, like from sleeping to walking to just being to like helping,
It's being 12 years old and playing with a cap gun. I mean, it's just, it's unbelievable to me. And it just keeps happening. And I actually said to my husband, I was like, wouldn't you be more careful? Like if like somebody, if there was like a big movement in the public because nurses have been over medicating and killing their patients.
Right.
Nobody's been charged with it yet, really.
Right.
But people are talking about it. Wouldn't you just be more careful with what the fuck you're doing?
Yeah, like never put yourself in a situation to like hurt someone.
Right.
Especially when the public eye is like,
it's beamed right on the specific thing that you're doing, and you just keep doing it. Like, I just don't get it. I don't understand that arrogance,
Yeah, the only thing I can say is that there's been no consequence. So, there's really just no real like impetus to change.
Right.
And that's the sad thing, is like it's been happening for so long. Like, how long ago was Rodney King?
Oh shit, I was still in high school. Was that in 9th grade? Was that 89, 90?
90s, yeah.
Yeah.
And that was like one of the first instances on video.
Oh my God, that was so fucking... Like, there's a really great documentary. It's called The Roof is on Fire. Is it called The Roof's on Fire or Let the Motherfucker Burn? I forget what it's called. But
there's a few of them. Yeah, I think I've seen them all. One of them is like called like 92 to something else. It's like the years.
Yep.
And then there's another one. Yeah.
And the other one like really goes into the history of like just how incredibly racist the LAPD is. Like from, you know, like post World War II, like when, you know, Black people started coming up from the North and like getting their war pensions and being middle-class Americans in the North. And how fucking ingrained that is.
Oh, I mean, what? Like Compton? Like that area?
Yeah.
Okay. Because the Bushes used to live in Compton before it turned into a Black area.
Yeah.
You know? And like, I don't know if this documentary goes into the history of gangs, but like, you know, the first gangs were like white gangs called like the Spook Hunters that were basically chasing middle class Black folks out of those neighborhoods. And then, you know, Black people formed the Crips to like defend themselves, and then it turned into something else and kind of steamrolled from there.
Well, and especially in like LA, because you also have like a big Mexican population. Mm-hmm. So you have all that racial tension too. I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's just, but I mean, it talked about how I wish I could describe it better, but it's really just how since the 40s, the police, not even the gangs, it didn't talk about the gangs. It talked about how institutionalized discrimination is in the LAPD. And like their commissioner, I don't know, like whatever their commissioner of police or, you know, whoever that is, he learned from like the classic racist, you know what I mean? Right. And then that like philosophy, it's like a philosophy of discrimination has just gone down like today until today, you know?
So let's get back to the hugs and the holds that you were talking about.
Sorry, yeah.
So do police know these methods that you're talking about?
I don't know. Trained? I mean, they should, right? Because your first line is not contact at all. That was the thing that I was taught. It's a special program. It's called crisis training intervention.
Okay.
Or crisis intervention training, something like that. And I mean, it shows you how to bring the situation down to a manageable level, like a highly emotional situation.
Before contact.
Before contact.
Yeah.
You don't need to put your hands on anybody.
Right.
And if they come at you, there's certain things that you can do to protect yourself that don't necessarily feel good to the guy, but isn't going to kill him. Right. Like if someone bites you, you push your hand farther into his mouth.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It forces him to release.
Right.
But it doesn't really hurt him. I mean, it hurts, but it doesn't really hurt.
Sure.
You know? If someone comes at you, I mean, it's all like putting your hands up, speaking quietly, you know, like just trying to diffuse the situation before it gets to the point where there's any type of aggression on either side. And I learned it because I worked in a children's hospital that took care of children with traumatic brain injury. And people who have traumatic brain injuries, who have mental illness issues, who have substance abuse issues. I mean, there's specific ways to speak to them that doesn't, so that things don't progress to the point, you know, of having to put your hands on anybody. And when you're speaking to like a rational human being, it never should get to the point of putting your hands on someone.
Right.
Never. Like they should never have had George Floyd on the ground. Never.
Yeah.
Like he wasn't violent. He wasn't dangerous. He wasn't threatening. I don't think he was armed. Like there's no reason whatsoever.
Part of that attitude there is they have this attitude, oh, you're not listening to me. You know, so now I'm going to take it to the next level.
Well, and that's what happened with Mike Brown, right?
Yeah.
He didn't listen.
Yeah. Yeah,
He
that's
didn't
a big part of the attitude that has to change. I mean, I really like to see, I mean, besides, defunding and dismantling, whatever, maybe they would just like expand the nurse program, and maybe there would be, I don't know what they would call them, but, it would be like, I don't know, some nurses that like go on the scene and like basically diffuse situations,
like a crisis intervention team.
Yeah, exactly.
Mike works with the mental health community, and he used to work for a place in Tremont, and it's basically transitional housing. So a lot of the people, it's an apartment building. It's managed by the Department of Mental Health. I might be completely wrong in this, but it's some sort of like city, city agency that manages it. A lot of the kids had been in foster care and then aged out. So then they had like literally no resources. And a lot of them have mental health issues because they've had a lot of abuse and trauma in their past. As you can imagine, if you're an orphan, basically, like something terrible happened to you if you're an orphan, right? So a lot of these people had very violent lifestyles currently and had experienced a lot of trauma in the past. So there were times when Mike would have to call an EDP, an emotionally disturbed person. So there's a special code for it, and he would call the police, but they wouldn't send just the police. There would be like a team that would show up, and they should have like someone who's trained in mental therapy speaking to someone who is emotionally charged.
Sure. Now in that group, what's the ratio? Like how many police, how many
there's
other
fucking cops. Like it's just like a shit show with the cops, honestly. And I think that, if I'm not mistaken, I know an ambulance comes. So it's like it's a really, again, it's not done great, I don't think, personally, just from hearsay, because knowing an emotionally charged situation, a bunch of sirens and lights and uniforms doesn't help the situation, especially if people have had trauma involving authorities before, whether those authorities are their parents, their foster parents, the judges, juvenile detention. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's not done well, but there is something.
During a part 2 to this, I can get more into a personal situation, but based on like where I'm filming out of right now, and based on personal space, I can't get into it. But we should get into that situation, because I think we might have some interesting insight about how those situations go down.
Yeah.
Okay, so you know the holds, and you know how to kind of de-escalate before it gets to any touching and things like that. So, I mean, what about like when cops say, well, bad guys have guns, we need guns or like weapons to defend ourselves, or that kind of thing?
That's the funny thing, is that, like, look, I don't think that there needs to be, or that there should be, a complete abolition of all police, right? Like, they have horrible, terrifying jobs. Like, I can't imagine being like a homicide detective or an SVU detective. You know what I mean? But like normal people who are just like patrolling to like, make sure that kids aren't, because it's usually kids, right? It's always as fucking teenagers. Like as long as the kids like are, behaving themselves and not acting crazy, I don't think that you need a gun to do that, because those aren't bad people, they're children. Right? So if you're investigating a murder and you're going to someone's house who's a murderer, take a gun with you. Okay. You know what I mean? Like you have to protect yourself. But
and then it should be someone who's like super, super, super duper highly trained and like is not going to make an asinine mistake.
Right.
who's not allowed to like just willy-nilly fear for my life, so I shot someone.
You have to keep your head. Like, you
Yeah.
have to keep your head.
Yeah.
I'm expected to keep my head. If one of my kids codes, I have to keep my shit together and fucking do what I can to save their life. And then afterwards, I can fucking fall apart.
Right.
But I can't panic in the middle of it. You got to keep your fucking shit together. And if you can't, then you shouldn't have that job.
Right.
I think that it's a highly specialized job and that literally anybody can like fucking do it as long as you can pass a physical, which is ridiculous.
Right.
I think that you should have a lot of training, not only in the law, but also in the human condition and the human psyche. I mean, you have to understand people before you can serve or protect them.
Yeah.
Right. And there's no part of serving and protecting that involves carrying a handgun. None.
Especially during traffic stops.
Traffic stops. Like,
I mean, so many of our people are dying because of traffic stops, Can
I tell you, I had an experience with this.
Sure.
This is a really funny story, actually. I was 18.
Okay.
I grew up in Pittsburgh, and there's like, some sketchy parts of Pittsburgh, like East Liberty, the Mexican War Street. It's a little sketchy. So my friend and I, both two 18-year-old white girls, are driving around in a sketchy neighborhood at like 2:00 in the morning. And she was driving her grandfather's Lincoln that had a moonroof. So I was like, fuck it, I'm getting outside the moonroof. So we're driving down the road, 2:00 in the morning. The cops pull us over, right? One on each side of the car, guns drawn to us. We put our windows down. As soon as they see who we are, they lower their weapons and tell us to get the fuck out of town.
Right.
But why were your guns drawn? I don't understand. Because it's, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was a traffic stop. Why do you think that you need a gun?
Right.
How many times does it really happen that a cop pulls somebody over and they shoot him in the face? Like, how often does that really happen?
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be not very often. That's someone who's like, big time on the run. Someone who's going to risk their
everything.
freedom. Yeah, risk everything. Yeah, everything. That's not normal.
Right. So, and I mean, that it just speaks to your point. There's no reason whatsoever for like normal cops driving around doing traffic stops and asking, for 16-year-old kids why they're hanging out.
Yeah.
They shouldn't have any weapons.
Right.
Think about all the weapons that they carry. They carry a taser. They carry a gun. They carry mace. They carry a big fucking stick specifically to beat people up with.
Yeah.
I mean, they're more the thugs than anybody.
Definitely.
Right?
Definitely. And then, so, in other countries, I think like maybe the UK, if you get into a very specific situation with a specific amount of danger, i.e. it's like going to be a shootout, you have to like go back to the cops' offices and like check out a gun, right? Like you don't even carry one with you the whole time. You have to like go back to a locker, check out the gun for this very dangerous situation, write up your whole report and like return it. It's not just on you for whatever random situation you may get into.
Right. And I think that that's much more appropriate than what we do.
Someone said something interesting recently. I think it was a comedian, but he said, you don't really find detectives in these situations. You don't find like detectives randomly shooting people. It's cops.
It's cops, exactly. And there's a definite distinction between the two.
Yeah.
Like detectives are, I don't know. I think of them as more cool-headed, more intelligent,
Well, they've got to be better trained, right? Like, I mean, these people were chosen. These people were probably like the best of the bunch to begin with. And then they're probably trained in a certain way, you know? But I always think of, my friend Ish was also in the military. And while we don't agree on everything, we talk about like rules of engagement and like when you're allowed to even take out your weapon, let alone point it at someone. And like the moment you point your weapon at someone, you have to do like a shit ton of like paperwork and justify why that happened. Like, meanwhile, these people are in a situation of war where they're like engaging quote unquote the enemy, and they still have a much higher accountability than cops do, who are literally, patrolling neighborhoods.
Exactly.
That's why I kind of laugh sometimes when people say demilitarize the police, because I know what it means, but it's like, if it was the military acting as the military does in those situations, it wouldn't be as bad as what we have here.
Not at all. There would actually be accountability.
Yeah.
Right? Like the guy who shot Tamir Rice would certainly have been court-martialed, right? Just shooting an innocent 12-year-old. Yeah. I mean, it's appalling. It's appalling at the lack of accountability that the police have. And, to a degree, I mean, I'm trying to be empathetic. I'm trying to be empathetic to the people, to cops, because they're people, right?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to have empathy for them, but I just don't understand how you could like go to sleep at night knowing that you did that.
Right.
And, and then actually trying to fight for your freedom. I don't understand. Like,
well, and then those folks that have been in those situations are getting into multiple situations, right? So they're being put right back out into the public after they've like hurt people.
Right. Right. And it's appalling. I mean, like I took an oath as a nurse, right? And I take that very seriously. I advocate for my patients. I only do what I believe is in their best interest, and I believe that the police take a similar oath, to serve and protect their community. Yeah. And maybe they don't like their community, and that's why they don't feel like they need to uphold the oath that they took.
Right.
But then they shouldn't be cops.
Right.
Right? I mean, there's certain people that I don't like, and I would never, murder them.
Right.
To put it like, to put it flat, like to put it bluntly, I would never murder somebody just because I don't like the way they speak to me, or maybe 5 years ago, someone that looks like that beat the shit out of me. Like I wouldn't murder somebody.
Right.
So it's just, it just, I don't know. I don't understand it. I don't get it.
Yeah, well, at least we're finally, I think, asking some real questions, because I remember feeling frustrated a few years ago at a meeting in work, and they were just giving us time to decompress after the latest shooting, and I was just asking, like, so what are we going to do? Are we going to like take guns out of the hands of cops, or like what is the next move here? What are we going to do? Because I mean, we get upset and maybe there's some marching and there's asking for accountability, but we find ourselves in the exact situation over and over and over again. So at least this time they're talking about a bigger step, like defunding. Right. At least that like bodes better than not seeming to have a plan for real change.
Right. I mean, you would think that after what we saw with Rodney King, that something would have happened then, because that was so brutal and just so inhuman. Like it was just inhuman to watch that, and but nothing did. It turned into a joke.
Well, the issue with Rodney King was white America thought that was a one-off. They thought that was something very strange and awful that happened, and so that was that. And it took for years, I think, for the technology to catch up so that folks would actually start believing us when we were saying that we were being terrorized by the police all this time.
Yeah.
And so for folks who didn't have any proximity to Black folks, let alone, you know, urban areas specifically, but well, really any areas, but
yeah,
for folks who didn't have proximity, I think it was just too much to believe. You know, it's just like folks did not want to believe that they were living in a world where that could just happen.
I don't know about that though, because I'm going to be honest with you. I think maybe they believed it because it happened to maybe their parents or their grandparents. Mm-hmm. You know, Italians were not really well liked in the 40s and 50s, you know. I, strangely enough, have been subjected to Italian racism, which is bizarre. And I think that they did believe it. They just didn't give a shit because it wasn't happening to them.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, there's that too. I guess it takes many layers to allow something like this to like fester for so long.
For so long. Hundreds of years here, you know. It just, yeah.
But you know, in a world where white folks are allowing their own kids to be like shot in schools and like not willing to make major moves to change that, it certainly makes sense that you're not going to, you know, lift an eyebrow, you know, when someone else is getting hurt, you know.
I mean, women do it to ourselves all the time. We make excuses for these men who are hurting women purely because they're women, you know, and we make excuses for them and it's fine. It's okay. And we support them. We support those men, you know, as women. And it's disgusting. It's disgusting that we do that. And it's the same idea. And I think it just goes back to like the history of white supremacy in our country. You know, like white supremacy doesn't just affect people of color. It affects anybody who's not a white man, you know? And I don't think that a lot of white women realize that. Right. I think that they feel like the small concessions that they get as a white person is makes up for the shit that we don't get because we're not men.
Sure.
You know?
For sure.
And I think that the gun control thing is a big part of that. I mean, how many women, I mean, I don't know the exact number, but I think it's like, there are women every day. I don't know how many, but there are women every day in this country who die by a firearm because of their partner or ex-partner. We should be, women in general, regardless of race or ethnicity or place of origin or whatever it might be, we should be fighting for gun control because we're dying. We're dying. White women don't really shoot too many people, right? And when we do, we go to prison, especially if that person is our husband. But those men kill us daily. And why are you I don't understand. Why are you siding with them? Like, I don't get it. It's like, you know, Stockholm syndrome or something, you know? So, yeah. And I think that that's the big difference also between nursing and the police, to bring it back, is that nursing is a female-dominated field. It's a maternal field. So we accept abuse. We accept it, you know? We're like, yeah, but they're sick, or they don't know what they're doing, or, you know, I did home care for an older man who had Alzheimer's, and he was in his 80s, and he was not like a big guy, but he was a pretty sturdy built man. And I would come home with bruises on my arms because he had no idea. He had no idea. I don't hold him accountable for it. I don't blame him for it, right? I understand this is part of my job. right? This is part of my job. He thinks that I'm attacking him, so he's defending himself. You know, he doesn't know what's going on. That's just part of the job. So you have to have that kind of empathy when you're working with the population as a whole. And I think that like a lot of police, maybe because of the things they've heard and seen, have lost their empathy. Maybe they've never had it to begin with. You know?
Well, I would say, let's be clear. Regardless of how empathetic an individual is, this system that they're working with, that they're putting into, is set up the wrong way, and it's training them the wrong way.
Correct.
So,
correct.
You know,
so
it's the commissioners, the police commissioners, the training guide that they're using, and sometimes they say, oh, the training guide doesn't tell you to shoot people and this and that, but we know that there's a legal thing that you have that you show the public, and we know that there's another way that you actually train your folks, right, in real life situations.
Right. And I mean, there have been specific cases of, you know, I've been verbally abused. I had a friend who was sexually harassed at work. When she reported it, the nursing manager laughed it off. And she reported it to the director of nursing, actually, my friend, and she wrote an email and she said, does someone have to literally be raped in this building before you take this seriously? And as soon as she said that, everybody took it seriously, because it's the next step. Like, that was what was going to happen next, unless somebody put something in place. So like that empathy, I don't know if it's empathy or if in the healthcare, you know, money is king everywhere.
Sure.
Right? So they don't want to like piss off their patients, you know?
I've been in situations where I threaten lawsuits, and I started being treated totally different in my doctor's offices.
Of course.
You know?
Of course.
Like prior to that point, like I would have like back to back canceled appointments, and like I was in this whole whirlwind between, you know, my regular appointments to like the specialist to the insurance companies, and they're all like pushing me around, and I'm like, look, I just, you know, doctor says I need to see a specialist. I go to see the specialist, and they say that the doctor didn't sign a certain piece of paper. Like, this has nothing to do with me. Like, exactly. I'm just doing what I've been told to do. So I finally said to my doctor, well, look, they're saying you didn't do what you needed to do. So, you know, I'm going to have to file a lawsuit against you and against this, you know, doctor's office until you figure it out. Then all of a sudden I had like a direct line to her email, and everything was like, you know, figured out from then on.
Yeah. And that's a real thing. I mean, if she or her office is negligent in providing you the care that you need, you have a lawsuit. That's negligence. Yeah. You know, that's negligence. You have a case, and they're aware of, like, some people are aware of exactly the line that they cannot cross.
Right.
And they go right up to that line.
Right.
For whatever reason. Yeah. You know, whether it's bias or money or laziness or incompetence.
Right.
You know, they go right up to that line. And then you remind them that the line is there and that you're aware that the line is there.
Right.
And then they do what they have to do.
Yep.
Which is a shame, which is what my friend did. You know, she made it publicly known to the administrators of the hospital that she felt unsafe at work because of this situation. And they would be held liable if anything happened to any one of us because of what she had reported.
Right.
So she had really protected all of us by speaking out for herself, which I think that a lot of people forget is the reason that you speak out for yourself.
Yeah.
It's not just for yourself. It's for all those other people, you know. It's a deep conversation we're having, man.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thanks for coming on. So, we definitely like to invite you back. Hopefully, Ish will, turn up next time. Is this a good day and time for you?
Actually, no.
Okay.
It's just a coincidence. Because my schedule at work changes so much.
Okay.
I'm available like different days of the week, but all day. So
Okay.
if you guys are available earlier in the day, that works perfectly for me too.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I usually like, let's see, I think, I don't know, Thursdays and Fridays maybe after like 5, or yeah, after like 5 or 6 or something like that.
That's fine.
And then
Like,
same thing with Saturdays. Probably well, until the election. Actually, I'll be busy during the day until the election, and then
works.
Sundays
Yeah.
are free too.
Works. Yeah. All
Okay,
right.
so yeah, just let me know next time you're free, and then I'll just try to coordinate again the times.
All right, cool. I'll
Yeah.
set you like a list of dates so that you guys can figure it out. So both of you can, work it out.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. And yeah, the name of this show is Let's Get Serious, by the way. So
Very cool. Yeah,
yep,
I've watched actually a few of them. So
cool.
yeah.
All right. And then when it's with Ish, it's on that Ish is that show too. So yeah,
awesome.
Thanks Pam for coming on.
Yeah, definitely. I look forward to seeing this again.
Cool. All right. Yeah, I'll post it soon.
Awesome.
Okay. See
All
ya.
right. I'll see you later. Bye.
All right. Bye.